My name is Wendy Ann Clark, and this is my channel Transformation, where I talk about how God desires that you would be transformed into the image of Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit. And here I bring teaching that I hope will encourage you to cooperate with the Holy Spirit and to be changed over time. And today I want to talk about the atmosphere of your home. And it started out as a daily topic, and then after I did the talk, I realized it was long. So I must have a lot to say about it. So I'm going to talk about creating an atmosphere in your home. So years ago, I was helping this boy prepare for an audition. He was a singing audition for something, and he was in about the 4th grade, and I really didn't know him well. I was just sort of meeting him, and he came into my house, and he was like this, "Wow, Mrs. Clark, your house, it feels so warm, so much like home." And I don't know what caused him to make that exclamation, but because it wasn't a wealthy home or something like that. So it wasn't like a pristine place or something like that, but there was something about the home that felt like he belonged. He was welcome. I don't know. I know a home has an atmosphere, and I know that we can intentionally decide what that atmosphere is going to be. So when my parents were still alive, sometimes I would go over to their house and they would have the TV on, just nonstop, on like news commentary, like in the background. And it's like the same story over and over again, different people talking about it. And I couldn't stand it. I would tell my mom, I really can't stand that. Can we just turn it off? And she was like, what are you talking about? It's like the TV. Oh, yeah. And so she would turn it off. To me, that was in the background creating an atmosphere. And it was an atmosphere of contention and discontent and arguing. And as background noise, it was actually making me feel anxious and restless. Now, I would say if I was sitting there watching TV and actively paying attention to it, it might not have that same effect on me. There's something about a TV being on the background that I really can't stand. Now, when we had the coffee house location, we don't have it right now. Hopefully we will again soon. But when we had that location, I put a lot of thought into the atmosphere that we were creating. The music that we would play, the things that we hung on the walls, the organization of the space, and sometimes my employees would be like, "Oh, I want to play this music." No. There was a misunderstanding. The music isn't on in the room to make us work really fast. It's not working music. The music is in the room to create a space so people can come in and have conversation with each other. They can work on something on their computer. It can be warm and welcoming. It should bring a sense of peace and relaxation. And I don't mean serious, morose music, but very positive and not invasive music. And I put a lot of thought into that. And I remember one time, often people would come in and say, "There's something about this place. There's something." And I know some of it's just the Lord. The Lord's in this place. But you can create an atmosphere that's welcoming, an atmosphere that brings peace, an atmosphere that's relaxing. I think about all these things in my home. I also think about how, like a particular TV show or a movie, violence or profanity, bringing something into the atmosphere of the home. And I remember someone saying a long time ago, a lot of people allow TV to bring someone into their living room who they would never open and let through the front door. And it's like, yeah, there's some things on TV, right? Or on social media. There's some things that you wouldn't let that person come through your front door. So be careful about letting that into your home, into your life, into your mind. Give thought to that. On both Saturdays and Sundays, I give special attention to what I might watch on TV. If I watch anything, I don't watch political talk or random TV. I might watch a sermon or something that's helpful that I'm learning, something that I'm learning about the Bible. I give a lot more attention to worship music and Bible teaching, and I think purposefully about setting aside those 2 days for focus and attention on God's purposes and plans And I think a lot about the atmosphere that's going to help me, because on Saturday night we have dinner and we have church, okay, in our home. And on Sunday afternoons, I go to the jail and I do a church service there. And I look at Saturdays and Sundays as like a time of preparation for the service that I'm going to give out. So I think it's really important. When I have guests over, I think about how the house looks and smells and feels. Is there enough light if we're going to be reading something? Are there enough comfortable places to sit? Is there enough food for everybody? When I make dinner, I always make more than enough food because I don't want to run out. I want everybody to feel like they could eat as much as they need to. And I also want some for people to take home. Some people actually need some food to take home with them. I like to have some leftovers. Okay, so I think about all of these things. When you have children still living in your home, give thought to the atmosphere of their rooms, the shared space. Consider what they're going to hear, how they're going to talk to each other and to you, how you're going to talk to them. My daughter, a grown daughter, was telling me, working at the airport, there were these youngish kids that were siblings that were talking to each other in such a nasty, horrible way. And that she was just like, oh my gosh. And I go, yeah, we didn't let you guys talk to each other that way. We just would not have allowed that. And that doesn't mean they didn't sometimes fight over something. It's just even how they would fight would be different. They would never talk to each other that way. I remember a young woman who used to disciple me when I was in maybe high school, junior high school. She talked about how before she knew the Lord, she had painted her bedroom black. And as I remember it, black carpet, black walls. I get a little excited. Black carpet, black walls, black ceiling, and it created a, mood and an atmosphere, right? And it represented both what was going on inside of her and what was driving her inside. And so when she came to Christ, she changed that. She had to change the atmosphere of her room. I don't know if this light is very good, but we won't try not to worry about it too much. She had to change the atmosphere of her room. So she painted it a light color. She had to change everything because it was bringing an atmosphere into her mind. So is your home, what kind of atmosphere is it? Is it contentious? Like, do your kids talk to each other that horrible way? Is it a restful and peaceful place to come home to? If you're home a lot by yourself or you're home a lot with little kids, how do you greet the person coming through the door? Like, if you're a wife and you're staying home with little kids, and sometimes it's the husband staying home with little kids, I know the world's changed, but so your wife, you're staying home with little kids, you're starved for some adult attention and conversation, your husband comes through the door, what happens? Are you greeting him with a list of things that have to be done, or things that you're dissatisfied with, or I don't know, what's the greeting that you give? What does it feel like to walk through your front door? What is the first thing that people notice about being in your house? That little boy said, oh, it's so warm. It feels like home. Why? Why was that what he noticed? He felt welcomed in, and we didn't even know each other. Years ago, someone said that, if you're making dinner, but it's a ways off, and you want to give the atmosphere of food cooking, start cooking an onion. I remember thinking this was so funny, but I noticed that often when you are cooking, the first thing that you're cooking is an onion or maybe garlic or something. You're browning it, and it gives an atmosphere of expectation. And so I tried it, like I just cook an onion and see what people would say. Oh, something smells good. And then my thought was, oh, I hope there's something good coming. It's just an onion. So, I was mentioning that my husband and I did not allow our kids to talk unkindly to each other or to us. And when the kids were little, how I would handle that, if it started out the morning and they were talking that way, I would make us restart. And back then, we still had cassette tapes and they would rewind them. Rewinding something was like, so I would say, okay, everybody back to your room. We're going to rewind. And we'd all walk backwards, go into our rooms, close the door, I want you to sit there a couple minutes, and when you come out, we're going to come out new people. Hello, good morning. How are you doing today? We're going to come out with a new lease on life. And it was funny. The kids would laugh about it, but it did work. Okay. And I often said, we're not going to disrespect each other or put each other down. You're going to grow up and you're going to be each other, still be sisters when you get older. And I want you to really like each other and support each other when you get older. So with that goal in mind, we're going to respect each other and love each other and talk kindly to each other. When one of my daughters was really scared for a while and she was having these nightmares, I became super careful and intentional about what she was watching, reading, and listening to. And I started putting on some worship music for her as she fell asleep, and the nightmares just immediately stopped. I changed the atmosphere. I was control of the atmosphere. And she told me recently, oh, do you remember that? Do you remember when you put that worship music on and it just changed everything? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you eat dinner together as a family? I highly recommend that you do, that you sit down together at the table. When one of my daughters was young, she had a friend that their family had lost their home. It was very, very sad. And they were living in an apartment with their kids in an apartment. There wasn't very much room. And they didn't have a dining room table. They would sit and eat at TV trays because there was a bed where the dining room table would go. And so Haley's friend just didn't get to sit and eat with a family at a table. If it's possible for you to do it, sit down at the table. And control the atmosphere of the family meals. So Haley's friend, years later, as an adult, a friend of mine in homeschooling said, hey, I met somebody who knows you. And she told me about this person. She's in my one of my adult school classes. And she said, she brought you up as an example, you and your family. And she said that you made a huge impression on her because you would sit down and eat at the dinner table, and she would come and join you, and you'd have conversation at the dinner table, and that you would eat food out of on real dishes, real plates. And that had a big impression on her. And I do eat food on real plates most of the time, even for our church group. And sometimes people are like, why aren't we using paper plates? It's so much work or whatever. I don't look at it that way. To me, the real plate feels like the real meal. Now, I do sometimes use paper plates when we're having hot dogs or hamburgers or something like that. But if we're going to have shepherd's pie and salad and stuff, I want a real plate. And so if my kids grew up with that and that idea that we would sit down and we would take that time and we would eat off a real plate and we would eat at the table together, control the atmosphere, control how the conversation goes, what's okay and what's not okay to talk about, talk to each other. Is it okay for someone to sit there and not talk at all? Decide that. No phones. I don't let people have phones. Be kind and encouraging. When you travel together in the car, put the phones away and just talk to each other. Some of the best learning and teaching times happen when you're in the car, when you're going from one place to another. So learn to talk to each other, meaningful conversation in the car. When you go to dinner together, put the phones away and look at each other and practice listening and having conversation. When you're raising your kids, all these times you're teaching them what it means to have conversation. You're teaching them how they would start a conversation, how they would carry on a conversation. I've met young people who do not know how to talk. They don't know how to look you in the eye. They don't know how to ask good questions. You need to teach that to your children. Okay. When someone comes into your house, stop what you're doing, whatever it is, acknowledge the person, listen, pay attention. When I was growing up, we had a lot of kids and the house was very chaotic. And we just had this habit of someone would come in and they were just supposed to make themselves at home, find a place to sit down, go get something to eat. There's something okay in that, something welcoming in that. But I've shifted more towards just stop and acknowledge the person and give a greeting and say, hey, sit where you like, get something out of the refrigerator if you like, try to stop and acknowledge a person, I think is important. And then pay attention to what's going on. Take stock. What's the atmosphere of your home right now? Just be honest with yourself. What do you think? What are some changes you want to make? What do you want the atmosphere to be like? And how could you bring that about? What could you do? Put some thought and creativity into the atmosphere of your home. So today, take stock. What's the atmosphere of the home on a daily basis? Is it chaotic? Is it peaceful? Is it comforting? Does it stir up anxiety? Is it messy? Okay, sometimes just a few plans for keeping a mess in control can bring a little bit more comfort and peace. And when you have little children, oh my goodness, when you have little children, it feels like your house is always going to be messy. That was my feeling. It was just a struggle. So some simple things that I did when the kids were little is that I got some baskets, and then before we were getting ready for dinner, I would give them a warning, oh, we're gonna have to put stuff away. We're gonna have to start cleaning up in about 5 minutes. I never just like jump up, but it seems disrespectful to tell your kids, get up right now and come over here. I always gave them kind of a warning, get ready for that. Then when we went to clean up, I didn't want to spend a lot of time before dinner cleaning up, but I didn't want to just not clean up. So I got them some baskets, and then they each take a basket and just clean up their area. Just put everything in that basket so that, my husband would come home and the house looks decently clean, and then when we were getting ready for bed, we'd take some time to sort through those baskets and put those toys away. Or if we couldn't that night, we could do that tomorrow. That's okay. They're out of the way. No one's stepping on them, walking on them. They're not getting broken. It's not a huge disaster. So that's something that I did. I also just paid attention to how other people were handling things in their home. I wanted to learn from other people. So if someone seemed to handle things well, I might ask them more questions about what they did and how they did it, or I might just pay attention to what they were doing. I also noticed if I went to someone's house and it felt unwelcome in some way, unwelcoming or off-putting, or I just wasn't comfortable there. So I want to give a couple examples without like being mean. So one friend's house when I was growing up, her house had plastic as you walked in to guard the white carpet, and plastic over the furniture to guard the white couch. And we didn't really hang at her house for obvious reasons. Her mom was very protective of the cleanliness of the house, but it wasn't a house you live in. I don't know, did they sit on that couch? A vinyl cover on it. Why? I don't know. I never understood. And I always decided I would have a house you could live in. And if it got a little dirty, I'd have to figure out, well, what would best keep it not from getting to dirty, but I would want to get things that I could clean. I never had a lot of money, so it wasn't like that kind of thing. But I wanted it to be a welcoming kind of thing. I had another friend that she had a whole room in her house that they weren't allowed to go in. It was like this living room that was perfect. And the family never went in there. They watched TV and things in the kitchen. And then my friend played the organ. It was in that room, but it was over by the back door. So to play the organ, we walked around outside and in the back door. And then, so we didn't step on the carpet at all. And we sat at the organ and she played the organ. And I didn't understand it. I didn't know why this would be. You'd have a whole room in your house that nobody could use. But when she had a birthday party or something that we could use it, we could go in there. But then I felt so uncomfortable being in there because I knew how important it was that we not mess up anything in this room. It's like a shrine or something. Yeah. I went over to another house one time, a mother of a friend of mine. He was a grown man, so he didn't live there anymore. And her house was the same way. She had this living room with all these like display cases and everything. And he was like, oh, don't go too close to that room. Just stay away. And I was like, I don't want my house to own me. I don't want to ever own anything that if it broke, I just couldn't handle it. It would be so terrible. It's so irreplaceable. It's so whatever, and I've lost some things along the way, or things got broken. It's kind of sad, but I don't tend to want to have too much of that. I don't want to be owned by my house. So I learned from places where I was really comfortable and places where I was really uncomfortable too. If you make your house too perfect, it might not be a comfortable place. So give that some thought. Don't put too much effort into be perfect. But if you let your house be too much out of control, that might not be a comfortable place. I remember visiting a girl. She was in my Sunday school class, and she opened the door like this when I came to the door. And then she squeezed herself out of the door, you know, like this, to stand on the porch to talk to me and the youth pastor who was with me. We were visiting. And I was like, ooh, this is very, very uncomfortable. And then somewhere in there, like, her mom came and opened the door, and behind her was hoarders, a hoarder's den. It was stacks and stacks of magazines and newspapers to the ceiling that was making like a maze to walk through behind her. And then she was like, Mom, and slammed the door. So she wasn't comfortable, obviously, having anyone come in, and she was really embarrassed about that. Okay. Yeah. So I remember that and feeling really bad for her. And my own house growing up was often very messy, and I didn't feel comfortable having spontaneous friends over. I wanted to plan for it, because if you just came to the door, I couldn't just pull open the door. I knew what's going to be behind me, you know, a whole bunch of kids. And we weren't very orderly in how we kept the house clean. So I changed that as I had my own house, because I wanted to feel comfortable. If someone stopped in, it wasn't going to be some huge deal. That doesn't mean it's perfect. If you come, and I might have my Bible study stuff all over the coffee table, if you just show up at any random time, that's probably what you're going to find. And I don't care, you know, about that. But I do clean up things as I go. And obviously, if you have young children, it's just harder. It's just harder time. So I decided early on what I wanted, and for an atmosphere for my home, and give some thought to it. So is your home welcoming? Is it comfortable? Is it peaceful? Do you look forward to going into your front door? Like when you come back from somewhere, is it a refuge for you? If not, then the question is there something you can change? And I know sometimes you might be renting a place and there's not a lot you can change. You have different possibilities. But what can you change? Talk to God about the atmosphere of your home. Ask him to show you anything he would have you do to change it. I hope I've given you something to think about today. If you like it, hit like, hit share. If you think somebody else might like it, hit subscribe. Please subscribe. If you just want to help me, subscriptions help a lot on YouTube. And hit that notification bell if you want to be notified when I post new content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.